New neighbor didn't like my old fence, so I took it down. About 5 or 6 years ago, I built a fence in my backyard. I talked to my neighbors and we decided on a good place to build the fence. We knew an approximate property line based on some survey pins, but we're both too cheap to pay for a surveyor. We shook hands and I built the fence. It was a great deal for my neighbors. I paid for everything, built the fence, and all they had to do was give me a thumbs up when it was done. Then, a year later, they sold their house. That meant I got a new neighbor. More specifically, I got Anne. Anne was from the big city. Anne was a realtor. Anne had flipped 8 houses in 12 years. Anne loved this new house and planned on staying for a long time. And Anne had a dog. Razzie was a German Shepherd mix that spent most of the day outside while Anne went to work. Razzie was aggressive towards children, animals, insects, and any plants that waved in the breeze. Razzie also, as Anne once told me, loved to chew on furniture. That's why Razzie stayed outside so much. About 6 months after Anne moved in, I saw a surveyor walking around in my neighborhood, and he was paying special attention to my backyard. The next day, Anne showed up at my front door with a stack of papers and asked me if I was going to pay her for the 9 inches that my fence was encroaching onto her property. I explained the handshake deal with the last neighbors, but she was having no part of it. She wanted the fence moved, or she wanted money. No discussions. She had spoken to her lawyer friend and was perfectly happy to take me to court over the fence. She told me, "I don't know how you guys do it out here in the sticks, but where I come from, we follow the rules." So I got rid of the fence. The next day, I unscrewed the horizontal rails from the brackets, stacked the fence panels up against my garage, and pulled up the fence posts with my work van. About a week later, Anne shows up at my front door again. She wants to know when I'm going to be building a new fence. Turns out, without my portion of the fence, she has not been able to let Razzie out unattended for fear that he will run away, attack something, or get hit by a car. She also told me she can't keep him in the house all day while she's at work anymore. Her furniture and carpet are all but ruined. I told her, "Well, Anne, I'm not going to be rebuilding the fence. I don't want any legal trouble, and the best way to stay out of trouble is to not build near your property." The look on her face was priceless. I thought she was going to cry. She probably did when she got back home. She tried to protest, saying that she really needed the fence back and she would even help pay for the new one. She told me how much she loved the style and aesthetic of the old one. It was just the location that she had a problem with. I stood firm. There would be no new fence. She never got a fence. She made half-hearted attempts to put up some bamboo fencing, but Razzie tore through that stuff like wet newspaper. Eventually, I sold my place and moved away. I took the old fence panels with me, and I still look at them every day when I let my dog out in the morning. New neighbor with dog didn't like where the old neighbor and I built a fence. She threatened legal trouble, so I completely removed the fence. Dog destroys her house. I keep the fence. That time, my mom upended the dress code for my entire school. When I was little, my mom sent me to a private, religious school. My family isn't religious, but they felt like I'd get a better education there. And when I switched to public school later, I found they were right. I was pretty far ahead. This school had uniforms. Boys wore button-down shirts with the school logo and blue slacks. Girls wore jumpers. My mom hated cleaning and ironing these white button-down shirts every day. I was one of 4 kids. Kids play and get grass stains. The shirts were taking up a lot of her time. Finally, she gave up and bought a bunch of white polo shirts and started sending us to school in those. Admin had a conniption fit about it and brought her in for a meeting. They opened the dress code rulebook and pointed out that these shirts were missing the logo, so they were in violation. My mom looked over the rules and confirmed that the lack of a logo was the only violation. They said yes. She thanked them and left, and the school probably thought it was over. Just to be petty, they sent a school-wide memo regarding the dress code. My mom took every polo shirt and stitched a homemade school logo onto them. It wasn't hard to do as the logo was just the school initials. Admin was furious, but during the next meeting realized their hands were tied. The memo piqued the curiosity of other parents, and they started asking my mom where she got the new school shirts. Apparently, she wasn't the only one sick of ironing and getting grass stains out. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one wearing a polo shirt to school. The worst part for the school was that, despite tuition being pretty expensive, They also had a kickback deal going with a local clothing store for the uniforms. The store had a monopoly on the sale of those shirts. When business started lagging, the store made their own version of the polos for sale. Eventually, the original shirts were phased out entirely. That was over 30 years ago, and my mom still loves telling that story. Edit. I'm cracking up at some of you calling my mom a Karen and clutching your pearls about the poor school losing revenue. You guys are acting like they had to put the school mascot down after they didn't make their nut on uniform kickbacks. I can assure you, they were, and still are, making money hand over fist and doing just fine. You guys typically side with the HOA as well when you read those stories? I can't give students a 0 for using AI unless I have proof. No problem. I'm a high school English teacher. I have two major annoyances when it comes to kids doing work. First, a lot of kids don't read or listen to directions. Assignment instructions are written on their papers, and I read them out loud, but I still have students asking me, "What are we doing?" That's no big deal, though. It's a pretty normal thing to deal with as a teacher. The real issue bugging me is students cheating on writing assignments using ChatGPT. I'm pretty good at spotting AI-generated essays, but the problem is that when I try to accuse students of using AI, they deny it. They act outraged that I would accuse them, even though we both know they're playing dumb. I usually just give them a 0 and move on with my life, but there's always the fear that one of them might take the issue to administration. If they did, I'm not confident that admin would back me up. It's hard to prove something is AI-generated, and these days, the higher-ups are more likely to side with the student. So I hatched a plan. I gave an open-ended creative writing assignment. The directions said to write a story about anything you want and then answer some questions about the story you wrote. The thing is, when you ask ChatGPT, "Tell me a story," it always spits out the exact same story, about a girl named Alara who lives in the woods. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there lived a young woman named Alara. She was known throughout the village for her curiosity and sense of adventure, always eager to explore the world beyond the familiar paths of her home. So, in slightly smaller print under the instructions, I wrote, "If your main character's name is Alara, 99 points. Lo and behold, I got one or two kids turn in a story about a girl named Alara who lives in woods. When I turned back the papers with a grade of 100 because I find that it stings more than a 0, the kids predictably asked why. And all I had to do was point to the instructions that they didn't read. There was no need to mention AI. We both knew what they did. Edit. For people saying they tried ChatGPT and got a different story/name, I don't know why it's inconsistent. All I know is that I get the same story every time, and so do my students. The paragraph I put in the post was copied from ChatGPT directly. I discovered all this when a student submitted that same story earlier in the year for a different creative writing assignment. Employers, careful what you ask for. I'm an emergency physician. I work in emergency departments in hospitals. An interesting specialty in medicine. Different patients every day, except for the frequent flyers, but that's another story. Now, especially in the wintertime, EDs are full of people with usually long wait times. And we take people in order of severity, not first come, first served. So I'm at work and get a new patient. The chart says, needs a work note. I go into the cubicle and see a patient that is obviously ill. After 40 years of experience, I can size patients up pretty well from across the room. This woman was ill. Vitals were not good. Fever of 102F, the works. The monitor shows her heart is okay, pulse is a little high, BP is a little low, high fever. Talking to her, she tells me she's got a cold. Now, I tend to appreciate it when patients just tell me the truth. She didn't claim to have COVID, pneumonia, anthrax, don't act, or anything but a cold. Which, being a virus, there's not a hell of a lot I can do for her. So I ask why she came in. Turns out she's been ill for 2 days. Her fever is actually down with her taking Tylenol and drinking fluids. No kidding. And her employer wants a doctor's note for more paid time off. This woman waited in the emergency department waiting room for, checks the record, 5.5 hours to get a goddamn note for work. Not her fault, though. It's her employer's. So I ask her how much time they will give her paid off. There's no limit, she said. I just need a doctor saying I need it. Got it. So she went home with a lovely note giving her 2 weeks off with pay. and instructions to return for additional time if she needs it to recover. I really hate employers that demand asinine notes like this. Fight the stupidity.